Good morrow to my fabulous viewers who watch this YouTube channel. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for your wonderful emails and your donations. Thank you. I really appreciate it from the heart and from the soul. Now, today's episode is going to be a little bit contentious, I think, and some people are going to look at me, Richard, and think you're a bit mad. You may think that I'm touting bad things here, and I shouldn't really have a platform to do this. Other people will perhaps be a lot more open to suggestion. They may well be going, hadn't looked at this before like this, hadn't thought about it, didn't really consider this. We've been so brainwashed into thinking in one direction and actually hadn't really given this a lot of credence. So this is a new story that was sent to me. It's a couple of months or a month or so out of date now, but you may not have seen it, and I only saw it a week or so ago. And then somebody, by coincidence, had sent me a book which correlated to the two. These are two different people, so it's sometimes, you know, what do they say? God moves in mysterious ways. The source, abundance, whatever it is, the universal mind opens things up and gives you things. Maybe, who knows? Anyway, here's the news story that's on the government's own website, and let's just see what it says, and then I'll comment about it afterwards. This is the news story. The Prime Minister to create smoke-free generation by ending cigarette sales to those born on or after the 1st of January 2009. Government to introduce historic new law to protect future generations of young people from the harms of smoking. Let's just pause there for 1 second. You may disagree with smoking. You may be a smoker. You may be somebody who has smoked and has had problems with it, and you may have given up. You may be desperately trying to give up, and all of that. This is not me in any way saying whether you should or shouldn't. This, to me, I did an interview with Sir Julian Rose yesterday. You may have seen it, about raw milk. And the government have said that raw milk is evil, it's horrible, it contains all sorts of nasty bacteria, and it can harm you. That's their approach. Julian Rose, who had a dairy farm in the 80s and 90s, and possibly even in the 70s, I'm not quite sure. He and many thousands of people, millions of people across the world drink raw milk and know the benefits of it. And people from millennia have been drinking raw milk and know the health benefits from it. And the government has said, no, it's wrong. You've got to have pasteurised milk. We know best. And Sir Julian Rose ran a campaign saying we want free choice. We want to choose. Don't just tell us what we've got to have. We want a choice. And he was instrumental in preventing the government in the 80s from banning raw milk. And here again, we see the government deciding what they think is good for us. Okay, people may say, but smoking is bad, Richard. Smoking is bad. It gives you lung problems. It gives you that disease beginning with the third letter of the alphabet, which I daren't mention on this channel because of the algorithm. Well, that may or may not be true. Let's not worry about that for the moment. It's a question of choice. It's a question of, we're all adults in the room here. It's a question of whether or not we want to partake in whatever we want to do. Why should a government decide for us what we want? I want to just have a little look further to see what this says, and then I'm going to counter this with something else. See what you make of that. So let's have another further. Oops, here we go. So this is the government to introduce new historic law to protect the future generations of young people from the harms of smoking. Smoking is, it says here, the UK's biggest preventable killer, causing around 1 in 4 deaths from that word you can see on the screen, and 64,000 in England alone, costing the economy and wider society £17 billion a year. More move would be significant public health intervention in generation, saving tens of thousands of lives and saving the NHS billions of pounds. A further crackdown on youth vaping will see the government consult on restricting disposable vapes and regulating flavours and packages to reduce their appeal to children, it says there. So there we are. So in other words, the government is set to introduce a historic law to stop children who turn 14 this year or younger from ever legally being sold cigarettes in this country, in a bid to create the first smoke-free generation. I'd like to know how that's going to be policed then. People now have got to clearly ask everybody who looks 14 or young, of any age, and then at some point, how are you going to carry on policing that into the future? I don't know. But anyway, that's not the issue I want to do. But let's just go a little bit further into this. It says here the proposed new legislation, remember it's legislation, it's not law, will make it an offence for anyone born after the 1st of January 2009 to be sold tobacco products, effectively raising the smoking age by a year each year until it applies to the whole population. This has the potential to phase out smoking for young people almost as completely as 2040. And then it'll go on about, again, how awful it is and how dreadful and all of that. I thought at the moment it was illegal for young people to be buying it. I thought you had to be over 16 or 18, whatever the age limit is, and that it shouldn't be sold to them anyway. And also the government put a warning on the tobacco, on the cigarettes and stuff, saying that it's not good for their health, and that as a responsible person or man, woman, child, whatever, you'll be able to read that and make up your own informed decision. I thought that was the current situation, not the nanny state getting involved, telling us what we can and what we can't do, and whether we want to be able to do it or not. Now, as I say, you might be somebody who thinks, well, it's a good idea, isn't it? Surely we don't want kids to be smoking. We don't want generations of people to be smoking. We've got to phase this out at some point. Okay. What about alcohol? Do you enjoy a glass of wine? Maybe that would be next. And then after that, what's next after that? What little vices do you enjoy? Perhaps something that you enjoy could be round the corner. I mean, it's a slippery slope, for one thing, enabling people, a government, an authority, people that you are voting in, to make these big decisions about what you, as a responsible man and woman, as a sovereign man and woman, can or can't do. And it's interesting, is it not, that at the beginning of 2020, do you remember there was that sort of virus thing that was floating around? And a chap called Anthony Fauci said, now is a good time to give up smoking. And then later on, after a certain medical intervention was given to pretty much everybody in the world, it transpired that nicotine, that substance that you get from smoking cigarettes, is actually it interrupts the spike protein. It interrupts the harmful effects of a certain medical intervention that people have been caused a lot of harm from. And one wonders, children are going to be are being targeted now ever more by places like the World Health Organization and the Satanists, the Luciferians and the nastiest people in the world. And of course there's going to be a run on people having more medical interventions because their immune system isn't able to cope with all the various different viruses. And it's strange how the one thing that seems to actually help people seems to be puffing away on those white sticks that contain the nicotine in it. And then you correlate that with the government wanting to ban young people from actually taking part in that. You start to see, if you were a conspiracy theorist, you'd start to see a correlation between the two. Somebody sent me this. Smoke Screens, The Truth About Tobacco. It's a book by Richard White. And it's fascinating because it talks about, I've read nearly halfway through it, it talks about the actual, according to Richard White, and it looks at some of the studies that have been done over the years that claim that smoking is bad and harmful. And it says, is it actually true? Does it cause the disease with the third letter of the alphabet that we all assume that it does, particularly in the lungs? And he goes into some very credible detail and shows where certain eminent scientists who have actually become, who were paid by certain, what would you call them, people, invested groups to come to certain conclusions, or that tests that didn't show that smoking actually wasn't harmful, not in the way that they're saying it is. And it puts on question whether, again, everything that we've been told about the old puffing away at the white sticks is actually as true as they say. Maybe it's not. Maybe, I know I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it's a healthy occupation. I mean, you can only sort of think to yourself, well, hold on a minute, haven't they got photographs of inside lungs and all of that they've got it? And the strange thing is that the ones that you see with those people who've got that disease, those black lungs, turns out that it's actually the only ones they look at are the ones that did the smoking business. The non-smokers, you don't see their lungs. Turns out that their lungs are the same colour if they've got that certain disease beginning with the third letter of the alphabet, and you couldn't tell them apart. Plus the fact it talks to people who do the, the autopsies, I think they call it in America, where they look at the dead bodies and they go, can you tell which one is a smoker and which one isn't? And apparently they can't. They can't unless it's very extreme. And it becomes very interesting that actually what we're being told about so many different substances, that the government are trying to guide us and program us into believing something that isn't necessarily true. And that's a bit interesting, isn't it? Particularly when we have a certain virus going around and the medical intervention is interfered with by a certain process, shall we say. And you think, hold on a second, that's a bit weird. Then the other thing to consider, of course, this has only been in the last, 80 years or so that we've been told all of this. For millennia, people in different parts of the world, various Native Americans and different indigenous people from different parts of the world, they've been smoking pipes and various things. They've been ingesting smoke. They've lived in smoke-filled rooms by campfires and all of this. And again, they've been told that we've been told that it's been very harmful for them. You do wonder how this human being has actually come to be here and survived after millions of years, well, not millions of years, but hundreds of thousands of years, sitting around campfires, ingesting all sorts of different substances. I mean, I'm surprised that we're actually here with all the stuff they're spraying in the sky and the stuff that they're spraying and filling in the water. I'm surprised that we're here at all. In fact, it seems that actually, according to Richard White, that just walking down the road with all the stuff that's being pumped out into the atmosphere, the chemicals that are in the water, the various off-gassing of plastics and various things, is far more dangerous than actually doing the smoking of a cigarette. So it strikes me that actually we're being misled, and perhaps there is an alternative narrative here that we're not being told. I'd be interested in your thoughts on that. So I did a thing about Biggleswick and was it a pipe dream? And I've dug out my old pipe that I used to have, puff around when I made a video some years ago, actually, a comedy video, and I used this old pipe and what have you. So I'm thinking now that actually this business of filling up your pipe and puffing away, and it might actually be something quite good, particularly if there's a thing called shredding. Is it shred? No, shedding. If somebody's got that medical intervention and they're shedding and it interrupts the spike protein, it might be in the same way that if you've got flies all around you and they're all over the place and and mosquitoes, and that if you puff like a cigarette or a pipe, far more enigmatic really, it gets rid of all of those things. Perhaps it will do the same for shedding. Maybe there's something in... I'm not suggesting that you go away and start taking up this habit, but I'm just questioning now. I'm questioning the science that we've been told, especially when government get a bit hard-handed, heavy-handed even, and they decide to tell you what you want to do. Surely we ought to have the choice. So I may well go and get myself some pipe tobacco, which is a little purer, I think, than cigarette tobacco, and start to puff the blessed thing. And let me read you this before I go. I know this is going on a bit. I want to just read you this from the end of this, just a little snippet here on chapter 13, health benefits from smoking. Yes, you heard me right. Health benefits from smoking. A lot of people may, in the freedom movement, in the spiritual movement and all that, will know the name Edgar Cayce, a famous psychic healer. He recommended smoking 4 to 6 all-tobacco cigarettes each day for people who suffer from asthma. A member of the Alt. Smokers discussion group, whose name will be withheld for confidentiality, is an asthma sufferer, and she finds that smoking cigarettes smooths her lungs and relieves the attacks. It has been known for centuries that smoking is a remedy for a cough or a bad throat. I said remedy. That's what I read here. A remedy for a cough or a bad throat. And whilst many smokers abstain from smoking while they have an illness, those who do smoke with a sore throat often notice it feels better. Sorry about my dreadful reading. And this is quite a large chapter on the health benefits. I'm going to read that in more detail. So question everything, ladies and gentlemen. The things that we're being told is not necessarily the truth, as indeed you know. Now, as I say, this may well be rather contentious, this video, and some people will probably not thank me for raising this subject. But I think at the end of the day, it's about choice. We want free choice. We ought to have it. We must have it. We are responsible people. We can take back the responsibility for our lives and decide what we want, and not have a nanny state, a government telling us what we can and what we can't do. So if you are one of those that do partake, enjoy it.